Hello, Rose. It's so good to see you.
And you. I love Tuesdays because I get to spend some quality time with you.
It's amazing. And what's the weather like in Tassie today?
Beautiful, 23 degrees.
Oh, we've got similar weather, which is fantastic. I feel like we're just next door to each other. I'd like to say a special thank you to our sponsors, Be Live TV and My Time TV, who support us in this journey of healing through love. Guys, if this is your first time here, let me just share with you. Welcome to the Healing Through Love show. And for those who've been before, welcome back. We are a social enterprise. I've got to put these teeth back in. A social enterprise whose vision is to shift awareness on domestic and family violence within the community and to help the survivors. Our mission is to provide family and domestic violence survivors with a soft place to land by offering advice and services for both them and their families.
Thank you, Charlene. And as well as the Healing Through Love show, we hold annual Pamper Days for survivors in South Australia. And local businesses come together and they pay it forward by providing their services and resources for the day for free to give our survivors a much needed day of indulgence. And each week on this show, we interview experts and survivors who lovingly share their personal stories and offer our listeners advice who have experienced abuse no matter where they are on their journey.
So true. And today we've got a very special guest. Now, Rose is going to pop away and help us with the back end of producing the show, because that's Rose's special area of amazingness is all of the admin in and around producing live broadcasts. So if this is something that you want to look into, whether it be podcasts or live broadcasting, make sure you reach out to Healing Through Love and have a chat with Rose, because she's brilliant at what she does. Now, we've got a very special guest today. We've got Joni Seeto. Joni is a therapist who specialises in helping women overcome binge eating and feeling confident in their own skill. She has some very unique skill sets that she uses and several modalities, which she's going to share with us today to help them move through this process. Now, having spent more than 20 years stuck in a cycle of dieting and binge eating herself, Joni knows exactly how exhausting it feels to worry about food and wait all day every day. It's only now that when Joni actually hit rock bottom, and I'm going to let her explain a little bit more what happened in 2017, and now she's in a position where she can make a difference for other people. And she's going to share her unique weightless method, which helps women make peace with food and reclaim their worth and feel confident and comfortable in their own skin. Welcome, Joni.
Hey, Charlene. So nice to see you.
Oh, I'd love you to begin our chat today and just, tell your story, because we love it when you get personal and tell, how did you get here?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is true, my personal story, that I got here because I wasn't always a therapist. I used to work a corporate job and, have a completely different life to this. But really, it's through my own healing journey that I kind of embarked on this path. And I'd say it all kind of goes back to my childhood years where you know what it's like to be a woman in our modern society, right? On one hand, we're kind of stuck between $1 billion fashion and beauty industry that are all telling us how we should be looking and, what kind of perfect waistline we should be having. And then on the other side, we've got another $1 billion industry that's just filling aisles and aisles of the supermarket with comfort food to mop up our insecurities whenever we're not feeling good about ourselves, right? So for me, growing up, we kind of had this thing that we did every single morning. You'd wake up, walk over to the bathroom, take your PJs off, go to the bathroom, and then get the scale out. And so you'd get naked, get on the scale, see what the number is that morning. And then we'd all sit around the breakfast table comparing our weights. And even like as a little girl, I can already observe that every time that the number would go up, my mom wouldn't be so happy. But whenever it went down, then she was really happy. And so over time, doing that every single morning, I kind of got the message that if I wanted to feel good about myself, and even if I wanted to feel loved, then I needed to be skinny. And that kind of set me on this path of pursuing a thinner body. Kind of almost became my mission in life. And so doing all the diets year after year. But then what happened as well is that anytime that I got overwhelmed at work, or anytime that I didn't feel so good about myself, then I ended up turning to food for that kind of comfort. And so it got me stuck in this real cycle of not feeling good about myself and going and dieting, trying to lose weight. But then anytime that I didn't feel good about myself, going to food to temporarily feel better, which then of course made me feel worse about myself. But it's just this kind of cycle that was going on and on and on. And I know there's a lot of women out there that are kind of sometimes stuck in that same cycle as well.
And this time of the year, it seems to raise its head even more. So what do you think, Joni, in your story was the deciding factor? What was the tipping point? What was that, what do they say? The needle in the haystack, the needle that broke the camel's back. What was the thing, the deciding point for you, the burning the boats moment? What happened? What was that?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to 2017. Pretty much my whole life, I made decisions based on what it would do to my weight, funnily. So I'm, as you can probably hear, not originally from Australia. I moved here back in 2013 because I thought that, everyone in Australia, they're really sporty and fit. So if I move here, that I'm going to be skinny, right?
I love that you think that about us.
Right.
What happened to the beer and thongs and the flannelette shirt thing?
Yeah, well, I only found that out once I got here.
I love that. So where are you from, Joni?
So I'm originally from Belgium.
Best chocolate in the world.
Yes, yes, definitely. Chocolate and beer used to be very much part of my identity back then. Yeah, but then same. So I was working in finance in a corporate job, working my way up the corporate ladder, and so stressed a lot of the time. And my job was quite international, so it was taking me all over the place. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm obviously struggling with my weight because I'm so stressed, and it's because of this job. Like, it's always something outside of us that we think causes the problem, right? So I thought, if I quit my job and I start a health food store, then I'm going to be surrounded by healthy food, and then I'm going to be healthy. Now, a year and a half into that, I was a very stressed business owner who was now surrounded by food all the time. And what is my number one thing that I do when, I'm stressed? But it was a good thing, because to a certain extent, it really kind of pushed my binge eating over the edge. And I was binging on a daily basis to cope with the stress of it all. My relationship was kind of on its last legs, because I was so stressed. I was so unhappy in my own skin. And you know how it's really tough to love someone else when they're not loving themselves. And at the same time, I was getting to a point in my business where it just wasn't sustainable as well. And so everything kind of came collapsing down at the same time. But in a way, that was a really good thing. And I sometimes feel like we kind of get gifted these little challenges in our life because they force us to dig a bit deeper, and to address some of the things that maybe aren't working in our life. And this was actually the first time in my life where suddenly I had nothing to do and I didn't have a backup plan. And so it forced me to take a really long, hard look at my life and go, okay, what am I going to do next? And that kind of is how I accidentally tumbled into the personal development world and starting to do some of this emotional healing. And I started to realize that actually, because before that, I had always been so self-critical of myself. Anytime that I was eating something that I shouldn't, I was always really self-critical of myself. And then I actually started to realize that that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was actually helping me, cope with this stress that I otherwise had no way of coping with. And so I just started to slowly but surely realize how a lot of these messages that we constantly receive in the world, how that had been conditioning me and programming me, and started to realize that actually emotional eating isn't really a bad thing. It's just, it had been helping me all these years when I didn't know what else to do with not being happy in my life, or kind of the stress that I was encountering. Yeah.
So bringing that higher frequency of gratitude to the thing that you were condemning before has helped to break the cycle, and lift that level of awareness to how you got there and what was holding you in that pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always find that understanding why we do something can just be really empowering, because it helps us break the cycle, and most importantly, it can help us remove some of that judgment, because I feel it's really when we're kind of criticizing ourselves and have all this judgment, that's what keeps us stuck in the cycle. Because whenever we're saying, oh, I should be doing more of this, or I should be better, or it just creates more shame and guilt, which would send me right back to the kitchen cupboard, essentially.
Yep, I hear you. So you offer, Joni, several different modalities in your healing technique. So could you maybe talk about a few of the modalities that you use in your weightless program?
Yeah, absolutely. So my weightless program is mostly psychology based, and it's all about going to the root of why we might be feeling a little bit insecure about ourselves, and also why and when we learn to turn to food for comfort. The main modality that I use is rapid transformational therapy, which is a form of hypnosis where you know it. Yeah, so created by Marissa Peer, which kind of helps you go back to those childhood moments where we probably initially felt rejected by someone who said something kind of nasty about our weight, and just go and give that little girl a hug, which is very healing in and of itself. Yeah.
I love it. That's fantastic. So great healing modalities that help people have that space between the thought and action, so that they can actually see what's really happening, and empowers them to empower themselves, really, and make choices, and really is a very loving environment to be in. So they're great modalities to work together with to resolve this particular challenge, which is like pulling back the covers to find out how we got where we are, and what we can do to move forward if we choose to. At least having that level of awareness makes all the difference. So what's your service delivery? So how do you serve people? Is it face-to-face? Is it online? How do you work with people?
So it's actually all online, and so many of my clients are all over the world, so not just in Australia. Everything is online, and really it's a mixture between learning themselves. I really love to empower women to start to learn so much of this on their own, because ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not going to be there all the time, and it's really about you being able to understand why you do something that is so empowering to then be able to do something different and think something different about yourself. Like, for example, honestly, my mind told me at least 12 times this week that I should absolutely cancel this interview because,
How's that work for you, Joni?
Yeah, no, for sure. Because our mind loves to, try and keep us safe from potential rejection that we're going to face. But
we love you. We love you. We would not reject you. We love you.
Of course.
It's so true, is that all of these mechanisms are in place to protect us. And as you say, when we can bring this level of light to it, we can, make it weightless, literally,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love that. And so these are two great modalities. So do you work one-on-one with people, Joni, or is it in a group environment? How does that work?
So I do both, actually. So I do both one-on-one private therapy or group therapy as well, where we do workshops and really have that kind of group accountability, which is amazing, because being in a group of people who understand is so healing in and of itself, especially when it comes to food and weight, because sometimes, the people in our lives, they just don't understand what it's like to struggle with some of the things we struggle with. And especially when it comes to food, you might open up to them and then they're like, well, just don't eat it then. Like they just don't get it. Hence being in a group of women who are on the same healing journey and understand what it's like to struggle with food, I feel like that allows you to then open up about it. Because honestly, for most of my life, I didn't even know that I struggled with binge eating. I just kind of thought that I sucked at sticking to a diet. But at the end of the day, like when I started to realize that and then actually started to open up about it, that's when so many other women kind of came out of and popped into my kind of messenger and kind of going, hey, oh, I do that too. I do that as well. And just being seen and being able to bring that into the light, like you said, is just so healing.
I remember having a conversation with somebody who was close to me at the time when I was myself 25 kilos heavier than I am now. And they couldn't understand why, knowing what I know, why I can't just get it together, really.
Yes.
And so I found that having a conversation about how much alcohol they consumed and sort of saying, okay, so if I told you couldn't drink any more beer, what would happen? Well, I'd just go have another beer. I'm like, okay, well, it's sort of like that for me in food, is that, when I go on a diet, it's like, this is what I can't have. And then, man, as soon as like no one's looking, I'm just going to have what I want. And so that helped me explain that. Didn't fix it, didn't fix that relationship either, but at least it allowed me to sort of say, hey, because not everyone gets the food thing, but they sometimes get an equivalent challenge with either, going to the pokies or another addiction, because it really is all the same thing, isn't it? They're all just different levels of the same challenge, isn't it really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all different ways that we cope with our stress. My husband has he's kind of an overachiever. So he just works a lot. And that's kind of, one of those coping mechanisms that society loves there. And so he couldn't, like in the beginning, couldn't really see definitely couldn't understand my kind of struggle with food and weight, because he thought, well, I'm so good. Whereas now he's starting to realize that maybe burning out every couple of months because of you're working so hard isn't necessarily serving him so well.
It's all still addictions. It really is.
So yeah, it comes in all different ways and forms, and it really all goes back to so much of these experiences we had in our childhood, where we experienced some kind of rejection or some kind of difficult moment. And then we came up with these coping mechanisms to essentially try and not get rejected again.
Can you imagine what it would be like if we were in schools now, as children start off in schools at, 5, 6 and 7, and just helping them with the tools to say, okay, first 7 years, you've developed some patterns of behavior. Okay, let's just craft the next 30 years. What would you like them to look like? And give them the tools and techniques that they need so that they can self-correct. Yeah. They can take on what they want to and let go of what they don't need to. I think, we need to start in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I actually had a client that I worked with last year, and because she went through her own healing journey, and she's actually a teacher, what she's done is, because she now understood how these childhood experiences affected her, she then took that into the classroom. And one of the things that she did is they had this kind of, I guess, like a leaderboard, or, which ones are the top ones and the bottom ones. And she just took that out of the room, and she said, we're not going to shame people like this anymore. We're not going to rank our kids like this anymore. And that's now something that she's leading as a result of her own healing journey. So I just love that when we heal, we make the world better.
That's what my mission is, absolutely, is for us to individually go through our own process and to raise our own frequency. And then in doing that, we raise the frequency of the people around us. So together, collectively, we can raise the frequency of the planet. So we're on mission.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
I love it. So can you talk about this time of the year? Because I know myself, the challenges that I have this time of the year with so many events. And sometimes, eating at home is one thing, or going to someone's place and eating is another. But when you're out in the community and you're at restaurants or going to weddings and functions, you don't always have control over the type of food that you serve, but we do have some control over the quantity that we eat. So I don't know, could you just share maybe some tools and techniques that I can use this time of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. This time of the year is so stressful for many people because it's not only, being seen, especially after 18 months of pandemic, where you're maybe seeing people for the first time in 18 months. Maybe your body has changed. There's probably a lot of kind of thoughts going around your head about that. And then also going to these events and then worrying, am I going to eat too much? Am I going to feel guilty the next day? All of those things. So the two things that I would really say is, yes, like you said, we might not have control over the food that's going to be there, but the one thing we do have control over is actually the way we think about it. And I know that back in the day, I would almost always set myself up for failure going into these events, because I would think, okay, well, I'm going to skip breakfast in the morning because I'm going to eat later. And then I'm not going to touch any of the appetizers, and I'm not going to only have one plate and maybe one piece of dessert, but nothing more. And then you get there and, the minute they stick a glass of champagne in your head, all of that goes on the window. And before you know it, you're eating the appetizers, and then you're like, screw it. I might as well eat everything now. And so I think that's the first thing, is kind of to not set ourselves up for failure that way, and actually really going into it and giving yourself permission to enjoy the food and to enjoy the day. Because by focusing more on that joy frequency, you're in the moment, you're present, you're doing it, you're appreciating the food even more, and then you're not having that guilt later. And because you're also more present with it, it's really interesting, because we always assume that the opposite will happen. We always assume, oh, well, if I just allow myself to eat as what I want, then I'm going to just let myself go. But it's actually the opposite. It's a little bit counterintuitive. But what happens when we truly allow ourselves to enjoy our food, we're noticing so much more when we're getting full and when we've had enough. And then because we've enjoyed it, we're feeling full and satiated, and we're just okay to stop there, which is so interesting. And then,
So true. I noticed that when I changed my level of being present when I ate, and then I would enjoy every single mouthful. It wasn't like tick the box, got to eat this in this amount of time and then we can move on. It was every mouthful was an experience. And then I noticed that I ate slower. And then I noticed that, I was 20 minutes in and I was feeling full, whereas before I would finish it in under 10 minutes and I'd still be hungry, so I'd eat more. So all of that, bringing that state of presence and joy and gratitude to each mouthful. Whereas before I'd count how many times I'd chew, and that's great, maybe for my digestive system, but it wasn't okay for my head. And it wasn't okay for me spiritually as a human. So just, I love these concepts that you have for your waitlist program. And can you expand a little bit more on the waitlist program? So how long does the course go for? How many modules, or is it just they come in and go out? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
For sure. So I typically only work with women on a 12-month basis. I mean, we can speed it up a little bit, but because we go deep, essentially, we start with awareness. As you know, awareness is already half the battle. So we dive in and start to decode your cravings and kind of have a look at why you really turn to food. And the second thing is we look at the mindset piece, because so much of how we think about ourselves is actually controls how we feel about ourselves. So when we dive into the mindset, look at how we're thinking about ourselves and start to shift that narrative so that we just kind of start to talk to ourselves a bit more like a friend rather than our worst enemy. And after that, we really dive deep into the emotions and into some of those childhood experiences that led us to start thinking about ourselves in a certain way, and start shifting those feelings and healing through love, as you would say here on the show. And then, because so much of the way we feel about our body has nothing to do with what our body actually looks like. It's really just a mirror, a reflection of the way we feel about ourselves. And so when we heal that and we find our way back to our own heart, that's when we can start also to shift the narrative around food and our bodies and start truly living our life. So that's the 6-step weightless method.
Oh, I love it. And this whole process takes 12 months to go through from end to end, and it's done either 1-to-1 or 1-to-many. And there's a price point difference between the 1-to-1 and the 1-to-many?
There is, absolutely. So prices range between 2,000 and 5,000.
Excellent. And I understand that you've got a special offer for our listeners today, so they can get a taste. Oh, that's a great word to use, isn't it? A taste, a sample, an example, from some assistance for free. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Because I know this time of year, like we talked about today, can be a little bit difficult. So I'm offering a little bit of extra support in a free Facebook group, which no doubt you'll share the link to. So you can really, so people can really kind of have a completely different holiday experience this year and enjoy the festive season without worrying about food or weight.
I love it. So we'll make sure that link is in the comments underneath today's live, and also in, and this will be obviously copied to YouTube as well, and copied throughout the different pages that we share it to. So that's very excited. Joni, thank you so much for taking us through this entire adventure of how you got where you are and the learnings that you've had from that, and now with your expertise helping other women so that they can move through this journey of weightlessness, which is beautiful, and your great tips for this time of the year. So thank you for that. And thank you for your generous offering of people being able to jump into the Facebook group to basically, it's a smorgasbord, all you can eat of information to be able to move forward to your level of weightlessness. Thank you, Joni, for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Charlene.
Such beautiful. Thank you so much, Joni. And I'd like to welcome back to the virtual stage our beautiful Rose. Hey, Rose.
Hey.
Love it. Did you take notes? I took lots of notes from Joni. So, because this time of the year is all shades of interesting, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
What we eat and what we don't eat, and how often we eat it, and how much we eat. So that's good. So Joni's session came at a really good time. We're looking forward to sharing this, and Rose does post this to YouTube as well as to many of our Facebook pages. Rose, we've got some activity happening here at Healing Through Love. Can you start the journey by just sharing us what's happening in Tasmania moving forward?
Yes, we're going to be having a men's retreat next year. It's the first of its kind that Healing Through Love has done. We normally do Pamper Days in Adelaide. We explained early on that, survivors come and get pampered for the day with hairdressing and makeup and all sorts of other things. But this men's retreat is for men in the domestic and family violence space, and to those who have been sexually abused, either as children or as teens, for them to come to a safe space to, tell their stories. I won't be there personally. I will have male counsellors and advisors and facilitators there to make you so that you're comfortable. And I'm trying to find some accommodation where the guys can have separate rooms, because some men may feel uncomfortable in sharing a space, a physical space with others. So for whatever reason that might be. So yeah, I'm still on the outlook for a venue that will allow us to camp there for over the weekend.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. And over to Adelaide, we've got our Healing Through Love. We're still looking for a location. So if you know anyone that can help us, we need about 5 or 6 rooms. And yeah, if you've got a location in mind, or someone that can help us, we are still looking actively on a weekly basis for a location to have our Healing Through Love Pamper Day, where survivors come and they're pampered from head to toe with skincare, makeup, hair care, chakra aligning, all sorts of energy work. We've got a gift shop in there so they can take lots of goodies home with them, clothes, makeup, skincare, and handbags and jewellery. And then we're also putting together our goodie packages, our pamper packages for Christmas. So if you've got products yourselves that are brand new that you're looking to pass on, you just need to let us know through Healing Through Love. We'll come and collect them, so you don't need to worry about that. And we're putting together pamper packages that are going to Zara, to the ladies that are right in the throes this time of the year of actually escaping is the best way to explain it. And some of them have left with nothing. We're supplying the toiletries for them so that they can move forward. Thank you again, Rose, for everything that you do. It's a privilege and a pleasure to work with you. And we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for another session of Healing for Love. Bye for now. You've got this.